Hello, everyone. If everyone can hear us, please say hi in the chat. All right, let's kick it off. So welcome. This is the AppJobs webinar talking about how COVID-19 is shaking up the gig economy and how to move forward in that. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'm really happy to see you. We have viewers from all around the world. So my name is Anya Prevale-Kinstel, and I'm a project manager here at AppJobs, and I'll be moderating today's session. And going over how the gig economy is reacting to this current pandemic, and how AppJobs, the world's largest gig economy platform, is also reacting and responding to that and helping both our partners and members. So during this webinar, we're going to be hearing from three people. First will be Tobias, who is the director of AppJobs Institute. He'll be giving us insight on the gig economy based on the data that we have collected from our over 1 million members. And then next, we will be hearing from Alok. He's the CEO and co-founder of AppJobs. He will present on the challenges, solutions, and how we're working internally to help meet the needs of our members. And then thirdly, we'll be hearing from the head of our partner growth, Magdalena, who will share on how AppJobs is creating new partner solutions as COVID-19 is impacting platforms in a bunch of different ways. And so here are our three wonderful speakers today. And so some good things for you to know is that you can post questions throughout the chat or in the question section, and you can chat, give feedback, your thoughts. Make sure to save some questions. We'll have Q&A at the end. And after that, we'll be going over about 5 questions. So if we do not get to your question, though, don't worry. We'll be answering via email. Also, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if there's anything you want to go back and review or share, feel free to do so. So we are very excited to hear what you guys think about how COVID-19 or what we think on how COVID-19 is impacting us and share some more insight that we have. So just to give you a little bit of feedback on ourselves, we're AppJobs. We were founded in 2017, so just 3 years ago, but we have since then really hit the market strong. We have over 1 million members. We're based in 40 countries and over 500 cities. So our mission is to encourage others to participate in the labor market, and by doing so with flexible job opportunities, tools, and support. Every week we have almost 30,000 people joining our community. Our goal is really to help those members with finding new jobs and flexible opportunities within the gig economy. So first, we're going to go over to our director, Tobias, for AppJobs Institute on how COVID-19 is impacting the future of work.
Okay, thank you, Anya. Okay, great to be here with all of you and discussing this, I would say, pressing issue. But first, a little bit about AppJobs Institute. So we started AppJobs Institute with the mission to gather, analyze, and distribute the latest data on the emerging future of work, and I will go back to that later. So in a nutshell, we're analyzing behavior data given by the over 1 million gig working members of AppJobs, just as Anya said, and their interactions with 1,000 gig companies. And we're cross-linking that data with other data sets to help decision makers and the public to shape the future work by, well, making predictions based on facts. So how is the COVID-19 pandemic impacting the future of work? That is what I'm going to try to talk about. But before we dig into that and to the data showing us how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting the labor market, let's take a look in the rear mirror to see how the trajectory of the emerging future work looked before the coronavirus hit the globe. So, due to technological advancements and innovations, the cost of communication has decreased dramatically during the past century, with some costs having dropped near to zero. As you can see in this chart, the cost of making a telephone call, or the cost of flying, or the cost of storing data have all plummeted. And this data, as you can see in this chart, is indexed from the 1930s. And as you can see now, it's way, way cheaper to communicate. And since communication leads to information, and having access to information also means it's getting increasingly easier to find, communicate, and to collaborate with each other. And this fact is decreasing transaction costs. And these decreasing transaction costs are causing a shift to how we organize work. So on the left side, we are moving from the traditional corporate economy, where companies are organized in hierarchical structures, often in a factory or a big office building, with the management on the top, the HR and the legal and the payroll people in the middle, and then the employees at the bottom of the pyramid. And we're moving from that on the left side towards the new way of organizing work. That is a more distributed way of organizing work, where individuals and organizations are collaborating on a more open market. And this shift is, I would say, manifested by the growing numbers of gig platform companies such as Uber, Airbnb, Fiverr, and DoorDash, and so on. And employment in the corporation is associated with some security regards to legalities, maybe pensions and healthcare. And I'm trying to describe in this slide, as you can see the scale here, is that the old way of working has a lot of security when it comes to healthcare and stuff like that. But at the same time, there also comes with limitations. And these limitations are, for example, you need to have loyalty. There's compensation limits, and also you need to be at an office. And you can see on the scale on the right hand in this new emerging gig economy, so it's called. Well, the thing is that there's a lot of more flexibility there at the cost of security. So, for example, in several countries, gig workers are not entitled to safety nets as healthcare and paid sick leave. So there's a lot less security, at least for the moment, but there's also a lot more flexibility. So even though this way of organizing and performing work is, still quite young, only about 10 years, depending on how you count it, it's impacting millions of workers worldwide, and it's actually growing quite rapidly. As you can see in this next chart, an analysis made by Edelman Intelligence, they have forecasting that in only 7 years, in 2027, more people in the US workforce will work as gig workers or freelancers than non-gig workers. So this is not only a small thing, like a small niche. It's still a niche, but this niche is growing rapidly. So I would say that the so-called gig economy, as it grows, and gradually it will be called the economy. So its high flexibility, low security dynamic is probably likely to create an intense and important public discourse that we all gonna be participating in. So, okay, so the future work is emerging. For now, it's called the gig economy. I think it will be called just the economy. So the question is, how is this trend affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, based on the numbers from the AppJobs community, we track supply and demand in the gig economy in real time. And one example of that you can see in this slide. This chart is indexed as of February the 3rd. This is before the COVID-19 outbreak. And it reveals trends on people seeking opportunity in the gig economy over time, starting, as I said, on February 3rd. And as you can see, the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting the labor market differently in different regions and countries. You can see the spike here above, the dark blue trend line. That's the United States. And as you can see, as unemployment is rising within the United States, more people are also looking for work in the gig economy. On the other hand, Spain, you can see in the lower there, I think it's the pinkish color. Fewer people are joining the gig economy compared to the 1st of February. But that's probably, or at least possibly, because of the strict lockdown affecting the overall economy. And as you can see, as social distancing is losing up a bit, that you can see the trend is also going upwards.
Can I comment on that? Actually, one interesting observation on that is also for Italy, right, which is the slightly, stronger pinkish line there. The sharp downturn that you see coincides quite well or quite exactly with when the very strict measures were put in place by the Italian government on, I think, March 8th or something like that. So I think one takeaway from this chart is that when the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely accelerated a lot of this, but when the pandemic becomes so severe that restrictions are, or that severe draconian restrictions are put into place, that actually decreases the gig economy as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Alok. So actually, let's dig into the data a little bit more. But instead of looking at countries, we can look at categories. Now, what we're actually working with. So this chart is displaying what different categories, what people are wanting to work with, their applications to different kind of categories. And as you can see, there's a shift in demand in certain services. So within the gig economy, the coronavirus has caused, I would say, an increase in demand for delivery services, as you can see, since more people want food and other commodities delivered to their homes. On the other hand, people are traveling less and spending, more time home, and this is causing a decrease for demand, for example, drivers and dog walkers and pet sitters. So this chart is also indexed from the 3rd of February, and as you can see, online survey gigs is, it has skyrocketed. Right now, the trend line is going down, but it's still 3 times more than before the COVID-19 pandemic. So these trend lines gives us sort of an overview of the impact of the COVID-19. However, it doesn't say much of the individuals. So we wanted to find out. So we actually made a survey this is the end of March. We made a survey of 1,400 of the AppJobs members. And actually, I would say that the results are jaw-dropping for at least, and it's definitely, in my case, heartbreaking. I will try to show you the results here. So as you can see in this pie chart, almost 70% of gig workers said they now have no income whatsoever. And only 23% of the 1,400 respondents say they have saved money. And among gig workers, some 90% are now looking for a new source of income, possibly in the gig economy, but probably not the same app or apps they used to work with. And over half of gig workers say they had lost their jobs, and more than a quarter have seen their hours cut. So this is severe data. So gig workers, I would say, are clearly among the hardest hits economically by the coronavirus pandemic. And I would say on top of that, when we asked them if they were satisfied with the support that are provided by their not employers, because they're not employed, but the company they're working for, almost 70% said they were not satisfied with the protection they get from their company they're working for. And actually, we saw on the comments to this survey that a lot of the yeses was actually due to that people are not they're not thinking that the gig apps will provide anything for them. So I would say with this statistics and the trajectory of the overall economy, I'm going to try to summarize a little bit. So I would say that the technology is decreasing transaction costs close to zero. And when the transaction costs are going close to zero, this makes that companies will have access eventually to all workers worldwide, at the same time as workers will have access to all work. So basically, you could say that work will be streamed, like similar to how we today are streaming entertainment through Spotify or Netflix. So this is what we see in the data, the future work. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, it looks like it's magnifies the challenges and the opportunities for this future work. So the gig economy will probably grow even more as people are getting unemployed. And this in turn will create a need for jobs that are easy to join. And at the same time, when we have a possibly depression or at least not a firing economy, companies seeks low supply. So companies seeks low risk supply. And on top of that, we're all now having like an involuntary crash course in remote work. And so as a summary, people are most likely to join the gig economy, even though no matter if they want to or if they are forced to. So the gig economy will probably continue to rise. So what we can ask ourselves now is that, well, how will this impact us? How will this impact you and your business? And I will say that it will also raise several questions that is bigger than ourselves. So we can ask ourselves, how can we, as stakeholders from different sectors, how can we contribute to a world with sustainable work and economic growth at the same time? So things we can ask ourselves or should ask ourselves are, what innovations is needed in this new economy? What policies can be implemented? What innovations can be taken and what questions should we ask? And how can we shape the future work in our own ways? And with these questions ringing in our ears, over to you, Alok.
All right. Cool. Thank you. So yeah, so maybe as a sort of a conclusion of the shift that Tobias has described, and also looking at this chart, we sort of see that the gig economy is gaining importance among workers, especially with the impact of the corona crisis. Now, I think having said that, there is a lot of attention around corona nowadays, which is granted that it is, but not so much focus on what will happen after the virus part of the crisis will start to ebb, which, by the way, most analysts seem to think will start happening during either this quarter or the next quarter. And I think it's important not to be blinded by the current crisis, because actually the next one may be even more challenging. So what I mean by the next one here is that I think that the way we need to think of this is a little bit like two waves hitting us. So first, the one we are tumbling around in now, which is directly caused by the virus. So that is, the lockdowns and all the economic impacts that we are seeing from lockdowns across the world. But second is the one caused by the aftermath of the crisis, or aftermath of the virus, which is likely to be a recession or might even be a depression. And at AppJobs, we are trying to have enough attention on the here and now, so on this first wave, without forgetting the challenge that is oncoming. So I'd like to comment a bit on how we think about these two waves. So I think for the first wave, the pandemic has already caused a flood of people turning to both AppJobs and to the gig economy for both economic opportunity, flexibility, and community. And as an example of this, in the month of March, we got over 120,000 new members, which is by far the highest number we've seen at AppJobs. And no wonder, as millions of people are losing their jobs at an unprecedented rate. And I think this graph here is an illustration of that. It shows the initial weekly unemployment claims in the US, and you can see that it's almost looks like something is wrong with the graph, because all of a sudden it just spikes up like that. Now, so I think our challenge in the short term is to keep up with this surge in demand for our services from gig workers. And now, luckily, as AppJobs, we've built a system that adapts automatically to the shifts in need from both gig worker members that we have and our gig provider partners. So what this means is that when economic opportunity disappears from one part of the ecosystem, our system will automatically direct you as a gig worker to another part where opportunity still resides. So that's sort of the automatic part. And then in parallel to this, and you will hear Magda talk more about this later, but in parallel to this, our team is working hard to manually dig up as many opportunities as possible that are available and that we wouldn't normally think of. And since the crisis started, we've been pretty successful in this and added many new partners with whom people can make money. So we're proud of that. Now, I think that's sort of in the short term. So for the first wave. Now, for the second wave in the long run, we have to be even more creative. I think that the main challenge will be to mature the gig economy as a workplace into providing more stability than it's currently doing. So we should remember that the main advantage for the individual with the gig economy is flexibility, which is what Tobias was talking about. But as he also pointed out, flexibility often comes at the expense of stability and security. And with a more volatile and uncertain world in general, compensating for this lack of stability and security, I think should be the priority for not only us but many other players in the gig economy as well. And from our point of view, we're working on this in a few ways. So first of all, we've launched a COVID-19 response center for our members, so that they can get access to the latest resources that we find. But I think that's just the beginning, and I mean it's something that many companies do, and we do that as well. It's a sort of no regret move. I think the next step for us is to launch a meta app profile that gathers the overview of gigs you do from multiple platforms into one app, and also reward you for it. It's a small step, but an important one, and the team is building it in record speed, and it will be coming out in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, I think that and maybe this will be crucial, and that will be for us to integrate more closely the sort of mosaic of services, solutions, and tools that an individual currently needs to deal with to function in the gig economy. And so if we manage to integrate all of this more closely and bring it together, this will serve to make the experience of working in the gig economy less fragmented, and it should reduce complexity cost for the individual and improve stability, which we think is very important. And if we do all of this, I think we will be able to deliver the positive feeling that, as it says here on the screen, every gig is in fact a fresh start. If we fail, not only AppJobs but like the gig economy ecosystem as a whole, I'm afraid that that statement will feel and ring more like an empty slogan to most people, intended to really cover up the hard times ahead. So I think it's very important that we hit the home run on that, who are in this ecosystem. So I think that I'll probably stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions and thoughts on this later. But for now, I leave over to Magdalena to tell you a bit about how we're working with our partners during these challenging times.
Okay, guys. Hey, hello. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Please just confirm, because I've got some problem with the connection in the beginning. Yeah, all good? Perfect. So hello, everyone. I'm Magdalena, and I'm head of partner growth / head of sales here in AppJobs. And I'm here to share with you some insights from the commercial part of our business. So last week, I read an interesting article about the impact of COVID-19 on B2B sales. So now I'd like to ask you, all of you, the question, what will be your guess? What is the percentage of the companies who noticed a significant revenue drop last month? So please just write down all your answers on the chat. I will give you 5 to 10 seconds max. Okay, let me check the chat. 80, 75, 30, 89. Okay.
Do you get a prize if you're closest?
85, 80, 95. Okay. Yeah, so Fortunately, it's not 100, but unfortunately, the right answer is 75. So 75% of B2B companies notice significant revenue drop. So on my part of the presentation, I'd like to show you our perspective in a gig economy sector. And actually, the first thing that we're trying to do that we are focusing to grow the partnership where the need is booming. So what do I mean by this? Let me show you the next slide. Okay, so here you can see the graph, and the graph is showing firstly the main categories of our partners with active paid campaigns on AppJobs, such as delivery, freelance, online service, work from home, pet sitting, delivering, and teaching. And of course, we've got many more, but I just picked the most popular ones. And secondly, you can see the number of leads. And the number of leads in this case are the people who decided to apply or subscribe for the jobs in those categories. Okay, so what exactly we can read from this graph? So first evidence trend is that before COVID-19 hits, everything was more or less stable, even though there were always some more popular categories such as delivery, freelance, and pet sitting. And then after first week of March, we can observe a very visible impact of COVID-19. So there is a massive increase in delivery, especially in the beginning, freelance, online service, and work from home jobs. And at the same time, as you can see, the pet sitting category has dropped down significantly. So also the interesting thing is that categories like online service, work from home are also booming thanks to #stay-home situation. And I think the fact that many people are looking for online or home-based job right now more than ever before. Okay, so on the previous slide before, I told you that we are focusing on the partnerships in a sector where the need is booming. So currently, the core of our business is supporting the lead acquisition part. However, we are continually looking for solutions that could potentially make our partners' lives easier. And because of that, so far we identify and we have been working on 2 additional products, which are the answer for the current situation on the market. Okay, so in a nutshell. We know that nowadays many gig platforms are oversupplied, that's for sure, especially due to situation in the traditional labor market. So that's why we launched a power filter, which will help gig platforms to get better quality leads and saves a lot of time for sure. And also we are working on Sourcey, which is a digital platform that will help to manage the whole process from the very beginning, which is the acquisition part, to the happy end, which is onboarding. Okay, so let me change the slide. Okay, so in the same time, we're trying to explore totally new directions, and one of them is definitely our latest initiative. So last week, we've launched a new partnership with Hoist Finance, which is one of the biggest European debt restructuring companies operating in 11 countries. Our program is called Pay Your Debts with the Gig Economy, and the main goal is to guide and educate Hoist Finance customers on how to start earning money with the gig platforms, and as a result, pay all the debts faster. So at that point, I really hope that together we'll be able to help many people on that matter. Speaking of help or support, I think those 2 words nowadays are more crucial than ever before. That's why we have decided to donate 10% of our revenue coming from new deals signed until the end of May. So the money will go to World Health Organization to support the fight against COVID-19. So let me say that we are all in this together. And that was the last sentence of my presentation. So if you have any questions, just please write them all on a chat or just ping me on LinkedIn anytime. Anya, stage is yours. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Anya.
Yeah, Anya, I think that you were muted. It's so common on the online meetings. Yeah, we still cannot hear you, unfortunately.
Are you sure? I could hear her for a second ago.
You good?
No,
Okay.
not now.
Good for you.
Sorry.
Anya, still.
This is great.
Okay, so maybe we should support Anya a bit.
Yes, yes. Okay, so while Anya is trying to solve her audio situation, I think this is the section when we move into a little bit about Q&A, but also looking at how the pandemic will impact gig companies. So let's actually have a look at that question first. So what do you guys think who are in the webinar? How do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic will affect gig companies? Not now, but after sort of the pandemic is over. Will it grow different industries, or will it shrink it? Feel free to write what you guys think in the chat. And maybe while we're doing that, I think that we have some sort of guess provided, so we can have a look at that in a minute or two. But well, I see here Paula is writing in the chat that it depends on the industry. So okay, fair enough. So what do you guys think? Which industries will grow and which industries will shrink, or do you think that it's too early to say?
I can say that the one thing that I'm sure is that I cannot be sure about anything. That's for sure. But actually, I can tell you about the one particular example, which is coming from one of our clients, European clients, and it is one of the biggest pet sitting company in Europe. And unfortunately, they were forced to lay off the half of their staff. And I just think that it will take a while for sure for them to recover. I'm not exactly sure how long, but I'm more than sure that it will be not the end of Q2 or similar. But what do you think, Alok, for example, about the delivery category, because they are booming right now? It will stay like this?
Yeah, I mean, if we go, I don't know if Anya can hear us, but if we can go to the next slide, Anya. Let's see if that's, yeah, she can hear us. I mean, so we made some guesses here. I don't know if they're educated guesses or just guesses on what the possible trend might be. And I think that one, I mean, thinking of delivery here, so we put a green arrow upwards, and I think that the reason that we thought like that is a little bit on what some of you guys in the comment section are touching upon, which is that the COVID-19 pandemic is creating a lot of behavioral shift. So a lot of people, maybe older generations and so on, who were not familiar with using apps now are starting to get familiar with using apps, like Peter is saying in the comment section, and we think that is likely to have a sustained impact even after the trend is over. For driving or ride sharing, as the industry likes to call it, we don't think that there will be a sustained impact, and the reason being that during the COVID crisis, there's not a lot of behavioral shift there anyway, at least not that we can see now. But then, of course, and a similar thing in pet sitting, right, where was it Magdalena that mentioned that sort of is on the decline now. Whereas for part-time jobs, as Tobias, I think, alluded to, since in a time of crisis, companies will prefer variable workforce over fixed costs to reduce the risks. That is something that's likely to increase. I don't know, Tobias, was that a correct interpretation of what you were saying?
Yes, I would say so, yes. And I mean, I am going back to the comment I had before about this crash course in remote work. This will probably lead to a lot of people not only having to join the gig economy, but wanting to join the gig economy. because all of a sudden you realize that, hey, I can actually work from home. I don't need to do this long commute every day, and I can actually cut the middleman. And the middleman could be there still. You have a platform, but that platform may take 10% of a cut instead of employer who might take 70% of the cut. So I think this will. I think the COVID-19 will almost be like a catalyst for this emerging economy.
Cool. Yeah, agree.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, wow, you're back.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we've gotten a lot of great response, and thank you guys for also responding on this. I guess next we'll take it over to Q&A. There's a question section down below. Feel free to keep adding questions. We're going to talk about 5 right now. So let's see. I think first we'll start with, this question goes to you, Magdalena. How exactly does this power filter work?
How exactly it works? Okay, so it works that, so currently the oversupplied companies, for example, I will take one example, online service. So this is the categories that have a lot of people that want to join and want to work with. And a power filter could help, with those traffic coming from everywhere. So it's like a landing page with the interactive set of the questions that you can decide yourself before send us the description of your ideal profile of the candidate or of the gig worker. And then in the end of the whole process and the whole user journey, you will get only perfectly matched candidates.
Okay, awesome. And some other questions that we have is, so you say that work is heading towards gig economy with less security but more flexibility. Doesn't that sound still as an imperfect world? Is it fair to say that this is true new future of work? I guess we'll send that over to Tobias, since you're the future of work expert.
Yeah, I will say yes. I mean, we should remember that a little bit depending on how you count it. I mean, this economy is still very new. It's almost like it's about 12, 13 years old, depending how you count it. So we're almost becoming, this economy is becoming a teenager, and all teenagers have a lot of problems, right? And that's because they just haven't have enough experience and enough work to understand how we actually should structure things. So just as the industrial revolution was chaotic the first decades, in the UK in the mid 1850s, I think we're in the same wild west situation right now. And all of this, when the dust is settled, there will be a lot of important discussion of how can we actually secure future work where we have security and flexibility. So how can we maximize the potential of the flexibility of this new way of work at the same time as we can secure the basic needs of people. So I would say too long didn't read, yes.
And actually, if I can add one thing, because I see that there's another comment here saying, do you think the current corona situation will affect regulations for gig workers in the future? If yes, for better or worse? Given what Tobias was talking about, you would sort of hope that the regulations that come into place will improve the situation for individual gig workers, while also caring for the economic growth as a whole, right? Especially since we're probably entering a recession or depression. You want economic growth to kick in, but you also want to secure the working conditions for each gig worker. So I would say that's what you would hope for from legislators and regulators. But what might end up happening is not that, right? So there's a risk that for political expedience or whatever, there might be a backlash where regulation is put into place to block this development instead. I think it's a little bit too early to say, but it's something that will be for sure interesting to follow, especially for the different current players in the gig economy.
Yeah, and to add on that, I mean, since there's not much regulation in place right now, that means there's also a lot of business opportunity. And if these business opportunities are fulfilled, maybe there's no need for that amount of policy making. So, I mean, if you are of this ideological way of thinking that, you know, we should have this open market, let's make it play out, then you should start a company not only maximizing the flexibility, but also building trust and building security within this open, you know, within this market, because it's needed.
I think that this kind of leads us great to another question that we had, and is do you guys see that standard companies are going to combine with gig companies? Do you think that could possibly be the result of coronavirus? Is this already a trend? And how is this shift moving further from, or quicker and further from, standard structured companies as is?
Yeah, so if I may start, I think it could be a long, interesting discussion, but let me start by just saying this is, as you know, this is a mega trend of decreasing transaction costs thanks to technology. And since technology is pushing and driving these transaction costs down, making it easier for people to communicate and collaborate with each other, that will eventually push all these big companies to be more flexible, because they want to make sure that they are delivering the most value at, you know, in real time. And that is much easier if you can access the right talent at the right time. And since the transaction costs are getting so low, that it's actually more efficient and impactful to have people outside an organization and inside, that would probably make all these huge companies to decrease their employee size. I mean, Google made that transition for 3 years ago. They now have more people that are independent contractors working for them than employees. So I would guess that if this technology is still advancing, which is, you know, everything is pointing towards that, more and more companies will work more and more gig-like.
I would like to. I'd like to agree not only with the theoretical framework, but I think that I think that the theoretical framework that Tobias is laying out is absolutely spot on. I also think that, and Magda, correct me now if I'm completely off, but in the partnerships that we have seen during the last, let's say, 2 months, it feels like more and more traditional companies are getting interested in our services as well, which should be or could be at least a sign that this shift is accelerated by the pandemic also for traditional companies.
That's very true. I completely agree, and I think that one of the examples is one of the biggest, actually, worldwide courier companies that they decide to give their workers much more flexibility in terms of setting their own schedules and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to this direction.
And maybe even I don't know if I'm stretching it too far now, but I'd say that even the cooperation with Hoist Finance it could be an example of that. I'm not sure that we or Hoist Finance would have thought about this under normal circumstances, but given the severity of economic impact on so many people, I think that I would guess that's what sparked Hoist Finance to reach out to us and see if we can help their customers.
Yes, we will know for sure I think very soon.
Yeah.
And then do we think, this is an interesting question for us to think about, is do you think that because companies haven't necessarily given the support to gig workers that they've asked for, do we think that this could potentially damage the reputation of existing gig companies as well as the economy at whole?
Wow, that's a $1 million question. Well, I mean, let's be honest and say that most gig companies, at least in general media, doesn't have that high reputation from the beginning, and you know, this is in most countries seen as to use Tobias's terminology, a teenager who's a little bit unruly and should get in line, right? And most companies now, I used to work for Uber before, and I felt like Uber was quite often treated as this unruly teenager. So in terms of reputation, I think that it was starting from a weak position. But I think, and let's see how it pans out, but I think that it might actually do the opposite. It might actually strengthen the reputation of the gig companies, because I think that in these really big shifts that we see in the economy now, the gig economy is the most adaptable and fastest to respond. And I mean, as I mentioned, like just an example of how we've built our system that automatically adjusts to where there is economic opportunity. It could actually be that with this corona pandemic, the gig economy gets its chance to prove itself and what its benefits are, and that one of those benefits is really the scalability and fast adaptability to changing circumstances. So yeah, but it's a bit early to say, but I still at least I think that there's some signs to it, and the ones that I can point to is so one is I'm sitting here in Sweden, so I work from our Stockholm office, and when the pandemic started, even the finance minister in Sweden went out and said that, try to use delivery companies to order your food and so on, and most of the delivery companies are gig economy based. Also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the UK they were looking at partnering with gig economy platforms to solve some of the food supply for impacted individuals. Am I completely misremembering, or?
Yeah, that's correct. They are trying that actually as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And just to build on that, what you're saying, Alok, is that there will always be good players and bad players on a market, and I think that's why there's a need for tools to navigate in it. So I think there's a lot about transparency also. It's not about if you put too much regulation or too little regulation, things can happen, right? But if you are, regardless of regulation, if you put in a tool where you can start to navigate to see, to separate the bad ones for the good ones, that will increase the value for gig workers, and of course also the good companies that will be, they will have more attraction for that. So one example could be, the hotel business. I mean, thanks to, or Airbnb for that matter. I mean, if you're going and you want to go to, I don't know, Berlin, instead of just take a random hotel, now you can see what you want based on your own preferences. And I think that's a major force that we could utilize much more to see like peer-to-peer reviews. And thanks to peer-to-peer reviews, we will advise ourselves to make better decisions.
Well, I think that this is a great place to wrap up. So thank you everyone for coming and listening. Thank you to our speakers. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, any of our speakers via email. And if you have further questions or want more information, if you're interested in partnering with us, we have our contact information here as well. And feel free to use our hashtags for the future of work. And again, we'll be sending this presentation out in recording via email. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.